This is a ManeHustle Media podcast.
Hello and welcome to the show. My name is Jackie O and you're listening to Militantly Mixed.
Yo, this is Rashani from the Single Simulcast. And when I'm not making you laugh or making up parody songs, I'm kicking back, listening to Militantly Mixed.
I would like to acknowledge that the Militantly Mixed podcast is recorded on the traditional lands of the Karankawa people, and I wish to pay my respects to the people of that nation, both past and present.
Hey y'all, welcome to Militantly Mixed, the podcast about race and identity from the mixed race perspective. I am your host, Charmaine Fury, the busiest mixed race, bigender, bisexual, polyamorous, atheist, comic book nerd, cat mom, and two-time Asian American Podcasters Association's Golden Crane Award winning podcaster in this podcasting game. This is episode 154, and on this episode, I'm going to be sharing just a short conversation with myself and Sarah Lotus from the Mixed Bloom Room. Sarah Lotus is a mixed race life coach, and she has a program called the Mixed Bloom Room, in which you and a cohort of other mixed people work together and individually on various aspects of mixedness. It's basically a program that helps you be your mixed-ass self. It provides you with tools to cope and maneuver spaces as your mixed full self, or investigate aspects of your mixedness that you might be struggling with, that you kind of need help, external help to identify and use tools to operate through, get through. It's a safe space platform. You do work you have individual sessions every week, and you have group sessions every week. And I participated in this program 2 years ago. It has since evolved quite a bit. There's also a section now on healing colorism that didn't exist when I was in the program, but I still to this day use a lot of the tools that I learned in that program. I've also talked to other people who listen to Militantly Mixed who heard about the program through the show, reach out to me and be like, I tried the program and, I'm so glad to have heard about it on Militantly Mixed. So I definitely highly recommend it. So I brought Sarah back so we could talk about what the program's like now so that y'all can hear it. And if you are able to do this, I absolutely recommend, because in your life as mixed people, you're not going to find yourself in many spaces in which you are surrounded by mixed people, or that you're all in a safe space to talk about your mixedness without an outside influence. And while, Militantly Mixed provides that to a degree in certain areas, and other podcasts and other mixed race content probably does, the benefit of Mixed Bloom Room is that you get to curate your own, deal with your own aspects of mixedness through the program and the tools you provide that Sarah provides. So it's amazing. So I'm going to be sharing that conversation with y'all here shortly. And I did actually have something else planned, a hybrid episode where I was going to be talking about something else and the Mixed Bloom Room. But I think I kind of want to scrap that for now. And maybe I'll just talk about that stuff on a future episode, because I just want to share about the Mixed Bloom Room today. But before I do that, I just want to remind y'all that Militantly Mixed is a fan-sponsored podcast. And it's with the support of listeners that I'm able to even keep this show going. You can sponsor on Patreon at patreon.com/militantlymixed for as low as $1 to as high as anything you wish. And there are different reward levels depending on what you choose. If you choose the $5 level, however, you will have access to video versions of the episodes that I post. I try to post a week early. I just realized that I haven't posted last week's episode yet, and I do have the video for that. So I'm going to get that up. Hopefully in time. But you get access to the video versions of the $5 level, and that will give you a chance to see what it looks like when I interview a guest for the show. And shout out today to Shannon, our most recent Patreon sponsor, who did join at the $5 level specifically for the video access to the podcast. They had posted on not on Militantly Mixed, but on a different mixed race group about how they struggle with listening to podcasts because of not being able to connect to the voices because you can't see the people. And perhaps there's also some overlap in voices or hard to distinguish voices from each other. And so it's better for them to have access through video. And I got tagged in it. And so they joined to be able to watch the video episodes of the show. So shout out to Shannon for that. Well, I guess I just realized I'm shouting them out on the audio podcast that they're not going to be listening to. Oh, well, I'll send them a note. But yeah, so if you would like to sponsor the show, you can go to patreon.com/militantlymix and sponsor the show as low as $1 to as high as anything you wish. And all that money goes back into keeping the show going. If you would like to support the show, but you don't want to commit to a annual or monthly sponsorship, you can just go to paypal.me/militantlymix and drop some coins in the tip jar that way. I have heard from a few people that they have wanted to sponsor through the tip jar version, but they don't like to use PayPal and have asked for Venmos or Cash Apps. Venmo and PayPal is the same company. It's just a different app. So for those of you who want my Venmo, I don't have a Venmo for the show. I have a personal Venmo, but you can't have multiple Venmos. I think you're allowed now to have one business Venmo and one personal, but I have a Venmo for my mask making, so I can't have two of those. I could set up a Cash App, I believe, because I do have a Cash App for myself and a Cash App for Blurred Comics. If it'll let me do 3 on one phone, then I will try to do one for Militantly Mixed in case you want to drop some coins in the tip jar that way. But yeah, for those of you that want to support the show differently from PayPal, Cash App would be that way, or Patreon would be that way. And for now, I don't have a Cash App for the show, but I'll report back if I get one. And then lastly, I mentioned last week that I started a new thing with Militantly Mixed that I really hope takes on soon, and that is Pod Inbox. Pod Inbox, you can go directly to the website, podinbox.com/militantlymixed, and leave a voicemail for the show. I have 4 different inboxes to choose from. One is just a general box, so if you have any questions or comments or anything about the show, if you want to do a review even, you can send that voicemail directly through the website and it'll come directly to me. Or you can pick one of the other inboxes. One is Ask Charmaine Anything, because I do get a lot of personal questions from time to time. And if it feels like something I'm comfortable answering, I will play it on the show and answer it. The other is Ask for Advice, which will allow you an opportunity to share something you're going through in terms of your own mixedness and or a situation or scenario that you've experienced, if you just want to see how other people would handle it or anything like that as it relates to your mixedness. You can leave that message. I'll play it on the show, and then in subsequent episodes, as people respond back, I can play those messages as well. This will allow for more community involvement for those of you who don't participate on the Facebook private group. So if you're a listener, you're not into Facebook, I completely understand that. I actually only keep the Facebook because of the social media aspects of it for the shows. But if you're not on Facebook and you still would like community involvement, this is one way to be able to get that. Of course, it will be delayed because I'll play your message and then I'll play their answers later. But it's just one level of engaging in the show that's different than how people are currently engaging, which is mostly email and sliding into the Instagram DMs. So I really hope it takes off. I've always wanted a call-in version of the show. I used to pay for a Skype phone number, but I'd only get a call like once every 6 months, so I ended up letting that go. I've even tried to have people just send me voicemails over the email, and that's hit or miss too. And sometimes your file's too big and it's difficult. So this is a service to allow people to call into the show directly through the website. They click the link, press record, and it'll send it directly to me. I think it'll be cool. I heard about it on another podcast, so I want to give it a try for a couple months and see if it takes off. If it does take off, I'll keep it going. So yeah, I don't have a voicemail yet, so you can still be the first one if you want to. Leave me a message. And yeah, so I think that's pretty much it. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming back to the podcast our cousin and my fellow mixed auntie, Sarah Lotus from the Mixed Bloom Room. Yeah, I imagine it would, because I was a part of your pilot, right? So
Mhm.
things have changed quite a bit, and for
It's
me, it's been
changed.
about 2 years. So what is
Yeah.
it?
Well, now there's sort of a more a clear beginning, middle, and end, right?
Mm,
And I also created a super safe framework for getting clarity and accepting privileges,
mm,
which is, that's a soft spot for mixed folks
yeah,
in regards to colorism and that that part of our stories. Quite often, the privileges is mixed with pains, right?
right.
So that's one of the things that has really enhanced the course since I started it. And Dr. Sarah Webb does a workshop on colorism at week
Mm-hmm.
4, and she's with healing colorism. So the approach is very, pain privileges type of approach, and it's super powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot more focus on moving forward and a ton of tools.
That's good. So I say this when I do tell people about it, that I still use some of the tools that I got out of your program. And
Okay.
like, I don't recall like the naming function or whatever. I just know that when I'm doing it, like, this is my Sarah moment or whatever, like, this is something. And sometimes it literally just is like you in my head going, and why does that matter? Like there was seriously times when I'm totally messing up context, but like there was seriously times when I was like, I think I'm supposed to. I remember doing this a lot with you. Like, I think I'm supposed to be like, something about like my anger at the time had a lot to do with like the whiteness side,
Mhm.
of my personal family, and trying to reconcile certain things, but also thinking like, am I supposed to cape as hard for like the white Britishness as I do for the other stuff, and me feeling a kind of way about it. And there was just times when you would be like, seriously, like, and why does that matter? Like, seriously, like, you don't have to stress out about this thing. And it wasn't dismissive, and it wasn't saying this is not an issue. Like, it was just specifically saying like, you got to figure out why this matters so much so that you can move on, like, so you can correct it, because I didn't realize I was letting that thing bother me so much. Honestly, I didn't realize it until I got into your program. Like I
Mhm.
said, like, I think this is what I want to work on,
Mhm.
because I was just trying to find something to work on. I didn't really know what I was getting into, besides that I wanted to participate. And then as I got in, I just like every week I was like, I didn't expect this to actually like open up a whole bunch of stuff. And every time it was like, okay, well, we discovered something. Why does
Yeah.
this matter? Trace it, figure it out, move forward. So
Mhm.
sometimes the tool really is just hearing your voice say like, and why does that matter?
That's awesome. I love that. I have a couple parent clients that basically just have like a mini me on their shoulder.
Right. Yeah, it's just like your little
Like,
Sarah Lotus,
stop,
just
just
like,
stop doing that. Like, interrogate that a little deeper.
yeah, interrogate it a little deeper for real. Yeah, there's just like, what was it? WW, what it'd be like, what would Sarah Lotus say? Like, what would Sarah Lotus tell you
That's
to
awesome. I
stop
love
doing to your brain right now?
that.
Wait, so you have a new cohort? Is that the right? I've been calling it a cohort because I guess the like how my work always has been. I've always been cohorts of thing. You're starting a
Mhm.
new session.
Well, cohort session, course run group. Yeah.
Mm.
On February 7th. Starts February 7th.
What is the pitch now versus I guess what it was when I was like, what do you tell mixed people is the reason why they should do the program?
Well, you know what? Here's the deal. I don't really tell people why they should do the program. I just put a lot of my testimonials out there.
That's true. I see a lot of testimonies.
The testimonials, like I put them out in full because it's important, I think,
Mhm.
because actually writing a testimonial is part of the process, the healing
Right.
process, and getting, a good summation of what happened. So I put them out in full. That's really important to me. I cherish those. They're really beautiful and vulnerable. So I don't really tell people why they should take the course. I try to just put the testimonials out there now, and I have a lot of them. So, the proof is in the pudding. And I do just try to talk about what you'll be doing in the course, what the process is.
And the target still kind of being like, well, when I joined, it was from at least the program that I did, because I know you had a couple at the time, was very much like mixed race confident, like you were building your confidence toolbox in just existing as a mixed person.
So I guess like the gig is like, let's get your mixed self sorted so you can just go about your business.
Right.
Because we have so many other things going on, so many different aspects of our identity. And there is so much of what I call mixed chatter that like really it takes so much energy. And it takes away from like just doing all the other stuff, exploring all the other aspects of yourself,
Right.
So that is one of my missions, is to alleviate that, give you a confidence and calm about your identity. So that you can just like go about your business, kicking ass.
There were some times too, and I've talked about this on the show and like in other situations too, where I'm like, and I said it to you, where when we first talked about like piloting, I was excited to just try. I was like, I have never done anything that like it besides the show that like where mixedness was centered in some kind of way. So I was like, I was gonna say yes to participate, like no matter what. But I also thought like I was helping you out, because in my head at the time I was like, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm doing my mixed race podcast. I'm fine. Like, so what? Somebody will invalidate me on occasion. Totally fine. Not dealing with problems. And then once I saw your first, like your opening questionnaire thing to kind of engage in, I was like, oh shit.
Oh shit. Wait.
I was like, this is
hold on.
I was like, she's gonna mess me up. And it was like there was something, and I always say that like she's gonna mess me up. I don't mean it in a bad way. I totally mean it just like I'm gonna get into it. Like this is we're actually gonna be getting into it. And then and for me, I had my cohort, we had overlap. So there it just so happened to be some shared experience stuff that really
that was
helped.
Really, really lucky. I mean, the truth is that there are people from all over the world and all different mixes. And there is so much overlap.
There really is.
That every group has a, it's very impactful, because the community bond that's formed is really intense. Even if your mixes aren't the same, or you don't come from the same country, there's so much overlap in the experiences that it's really powerful.
It's funny because in the early days of Militantly Mixed, I was getting responses that said like, I really only listen to the episodes that have to do with, and then fill in the blank mix, right? Because they were feeling like that. And then I would respond back like, that's great that you're finding something to connect to, but I do recommend checking out the other ones, because you'd be surprised. Like I'm learning it too myself in the process, that I actually have way more in common with mixed people generally than necessarily people of my same mix. So there are times, and I don't often meet Black Japanese Brits that I'm not related to. But the occasional will be like Black Japanese, or, Japanese white, or Black and white, or, whatever. Like I can pick them out. But there are times when I took like the first 4 or 5 months of the show where I realized, I was like, oh, wow, they can be from Madagascar. They could be from England. They could be from Ohio. And we have this very similar, experience of just like people not getting what our deal is. But what I think your program would do for folks that haven't taken it yet, and what maybe Militantly Mixed does just, and hopefully people listening, is that they realize how much crossover we have in experience, that it really doesn't matter fill in the blank mix. It really could just be you have one side of the family that's accepting and one side of the family that's not. That's not exclusively Asian, exclusively Latin, exclusively Black. It's not any of these things. So, and there is somebody that I know through the show who has participated in your program, whose name I won't drop, but from what they've said when we had our like shared experience conversation of like, oh, you did Sarah's program, I did Sarah's program too, kind of a thing. That person was saying that they thought they were claiming their mixedness generally. Like, they're like, I'm a mixed person. I have one parent that's this and one parent's that. Like they thought they were doing it, but didn't realize how much they weren't claiming their mixedness until they kind of got into your program. I remember having that conversation after because I had talked about it during the early days of COVID when we were doing the social distancing hangouts. And I was like, now you actually probably have the time right now if you want to get into doing this program. Sure. And they got through, and I would get these text messages while they were going through it of just like, Mane, I can't talk today. And I remember that experience.
The first half is like, because now it's 10 weeks. And the first half is like, lots of looking around.
Whittling it down, yeah.
Lots of looking around and getting to know yourself. And I think like, yes, we can be standing in our mixedness. Yes, we can be confident and feel good. But have we ever sat down and like, talked about it in a safe environment and, like a totally safe environment, in a structured way with a beginning, a middle, and an end, with the intention of an end result? Has that, how often do we do that?
Where has that been available? Yeah.
It's not been available. And, none of my clients have ever sat in a space and just talked about their mixed experience.
Right.
Like none, unless they've been on your show, Charmaine.
But even that's like a one-on-one conversation, right? Which, safe space and things like that too. But when you're in a one-on-one conversation or you're talking and then one random person pops in and goes, oh my God, like, and then you realize like you're all experiencing something. That feeling is so different. When I've had Zoom calls too, like for the social distancing hangouts in the beginning, when there was like 10 or 15 people, it was so gratifying, like to see that many mixed faces, but also to like realize how much you had in common. And I mean, different than therapy, obviously you're not a therapist or a counselor, but in the coaching space that you're in, there is a lot of therapy that's happening, just accidental therapy. I think the same thing happens when people are being on the show, right? They're just getting something out that they hadn't got out. It's a safe space and everything like that. But what doesn't happen in therapy for most of us is being able to talk without having a pause, explanatory comma. Okay, come back, keep going through the thing. Oh, wait, you don't get this too? Explanatory comma. And so like, therapy is even not necessarily a safe space all the time to deal with your mixed race issues because you're talking to a monoracial person or you're talking to a person that's not even from any of your cultural intersections. And it's just exhausting. And I'm only realizing that, well, I guess I always thought that, but I'm realizing it more so now because I have a Black queer woman therapist and I only have to explain Japanese stuff. Like it's so much easier to not have to do both things. But also, even as I have to stop and explain the Japanese stuff, it's not like an assumption first and then I'd have to be like, no, that's not it. It's actually this. In her case, she'll stop and go, and is that a cultural thing or is that just something that you're assigning to your own Japaneseness? And I'm like, oh shit, like that, the way that she asked that question. So I think in terms of there being a safe space to talk about your mixedness, your program is probably, well, definitely the first experience, but probably the only in a while that someone might have. To be able to do that in a group setting without having to really expect that at any time someone's just going to turn around and be like, no, that doesn't happen.
I mean, and in fact, in the group, and I think we talked about this the other day, I have now sort of a guideline that, it's not about advice, that the group is really just a place to share and witness and affirm. And that's it.
Yeah.
Basically.
And
like,
that's
I don't
great.
even do any coaching. Yeah, it's really great to be able to just share and know nobody, you're not going to have to give any caveat. You're not going to have to explain anything. No one's going to try to talk you out or minimize or anything like that. You just get to talk about what's going on in relationship to the course. So yeah, it's really cool.
And you could actually probably get through your hour conversation without having to stop and explain most of it, so that only 5 minutes of it was fruitful.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I think the program, and even though for me it's been a couple years and the program has evolved since then, I would still say that I'm walking around thinking about it often. It comes up.
Oh,
or
cool.
even like if I get, so you remember how I was described, well, maybe you don't, you might, yeah, whatever.
I'm pretty detailed.
You remember, so one of your exercises was describing your own bloom room, right? Where you would kind of envision
yours.
it. And mine,
I love yours.
Is like, so for people, and I don't mind sharing it for the thing, but from mine was like the way the old, aristocracy, British aristocracy houses have those walls that are just filled with paintings and things that go like all the way up. Mine was always doing that, but it was like black art, brown art, indigenous art, stuff like that. And so every now and then the comic book stuff, like all of the things that kind of give me joy, or anything that I can hybrid together for my cultures. And every time I pick up a new piece, I like visualize putting it up, which I don't think I ever told you that, actually. So like I'll get this thing. So right now, there's a comic book artist.
So happy. Happy.
There's a comic book artist named Chuck Patton who's been in the business forever. He and I used to go to the same comic book shop in LA, and now we're friends. I call him Uncle Chuck.
Oh, cool.
He drew a sketch, a pencil sketch for me of Bumblebee, which is a Black woman character from the DC universe. She hasn't been out in a while, but she's starting to people are starting to remember she exists and stuff like that. So he drew a sketch of that for me, and I'm getting it framed right now. Nice. And then I've just like, while I was at the frame shop, thinking about like when I have it, because it's in this like glass with a very small silver mount, so it'll project from the wall. I was actually picturing like hanging it up behind me and watching the wall rotate up so that I could put it at like,
the rotating wall. But isn't it also round?
Well, it was just, I was imagining like being in one of those really big rooms, like one of those, like when they had entertainment back in that Regency period or whatever, they would basically just be in one room and the paintings would be all over the place. So it was basically an ever expanding. I could always grow it. And for me, that's what my bloom room was like. So like I actually do still mentally check into my
that's really good
bloom room. Despite the fact that it's been 2 years and I hadn't actually shared that with you. So
yeah, thank you for sharing that. I'm really happy to hear that. It makes me really happy. Yeah, the bloom room. I mean, I don't think people realize that that's basically the premise of the whole thing, is that you leave with an internal space that is dedicated to centering your mixedness and dedicated to having the tools for growth. That's so everyone has a bloom room. When they leave, they have a bloom room, and probably not enough people know that, but you don't
dictate what that's like, though. You give complete reign. You're like, imagine your own personal space.
Oh yeah, some people it's just a color, some people it's just an energy. It really depends on how your brain works, right? So for some people, they just have a color and a vibe, and that's enough.
That's cool.
I don't even know most of what they look like, because also it's one of those things you can't really, I think of them as like how you can't really get into somebody else's dream.
Right.
They can describe it to you, but you can't ever really know.
Yeah.
What it looks like in someone else's dream. I think that's what the bloom rooms are like.
Yeah. I like my little space. I walk into it like Neo picking guns in the Matrix when he just walks into the white room and it just loads. I'm just like, it's bloom room time. Paintings, black art, brown art, just like all over the place.
So awesome.
So that's fun for me. But why don't you give everybody the details so that they can sign up for the February 7th?
Okay, well, let me just give some like what you do. It's 10 weeks. It's a 10-week course.
Yeah.
And there is an individual session with me in the beginning of the week. And then you have explorations that you do through the week, which are basically just paying attention to what's going on in your mind, and then jotting down your findings. Excuse me. And then you have a group session on the weekend. So individual session with me, explorations, and then the group session on the weekend. And that's like the format. And we do that for 10 individual sessions and 9 group sessions. So it's going from February 7th to April, like the week of April 15th.
Mm.
Yeah, and that's about it. I mean, I'm registering people right now and, in the process of signing up new clients. So then you like, all of a sudden you have like a new awesome person in your life. And that's really nice. I really like that. But I have some spaces still. So basically it's just about getting in touch with me if you're interested.
And you can follow Sarah on Instagram at the Mixed. No, not the Mixed. It's just at.
It's just Mixed Bloom. It's just Mixed Bloom Room. Yeah, and I'm on the Instagram and I'm on Facebook, but Instagram is my preferred platform.
Right.
And then I have my website mixedbloomroom.com, and from all of those places you can book a quick video chat, which is the best way to start. Is to book a chat with me so we can meet and
catch a vibe.
Exactly. Catch a vibe and talk about, possibilities.
Yeah. Well, I really encourage for folks that are listening, listeners of the show, to participate in it. I've participated in it. I know of a few people that have listened to the show that have participated in it. So it's not coming out of nowhere. It's really not for me. Like, it is actually something that I still think about pretty often. And I'm just grateful that there are any of us out here trying to figure out how to service mixedness, service the mixed community in the different talents that we have. And in your case, just on a personal level, the way the individual sessions, like to be able to talk to you, it was always encouraging. It was always helpful. And it always made me walk away having to think. Mm-hmm. So like, it wasn't just like, oh, I got to go do this session and get this thing out. Like it was really like I had to chew on it afterwards, every time. And so I completely understood it when that one person would text me, I can't talk today. Cause it's just like, no, I get it. Cause like, I get it. Because you got to think, like, you're writing notes. You're like, did I really think that? Or you'll say something that surprises you in the moment. And it's not met with like, well, why did you say that? It's really met with like, okay, let's explore where that came from. And
ooh, that's juicy.
Yeah, that kind of thing. And you're just like, oh no, did I reveal something? There were so many times when it was just like, oh no, what did I say? And then having to think about it. And you weren't doing anything like that. You were just creating a space that finally allowed for letting that out. And
once you start talking about something that you've never had the space to talk about, all sorts of synapses go off in your mind, you know, and like all these connections are made, and there's just more space. It just becomes the space to do that.
It's a really healthy way of processing it, I think. And it's worth it. I think it's worth it. I don't care how old someone is. I get those messages all the time where someone's like, well, I can't really change. I'm 68. Well, I have 68-year-olds emailing me like, how do I process something like that? Like, because they didn't get to do it in their generation. They're trying to do it now. I'm processing differlifelong than 20-year-olds now. Does that mean I stop what I'm doing?
I'm still processing,
Yeah,
I mean,
constantly.
It doesn't stop. It's lifelong.
Yeah. So I'm
and actually I just wanted to say one thing, because one of the things that I really appreciate about my coaching
I'm talking like celebrate. I'm serious. You yes.
Is that I will meet you where you are. So wherever you are in your journey, I'm going to meet you there. That doesn't mean we're not going to get the work done, right?
I can vouch for that.
But I definitely will meet you where you are. And I like coaching like that, because it does leave a lot more room for like just to be yourself and not and to sort of settle into the journey rather than worry about what might happen.
Yeah. And just have the experience, because the stuff you learn about yourself especially when you think you know yourself well, like the humbling of like, oh wait, actually you have stuff to deal with is, I think, a very valuable thing. And for me, I'm always working on myself, and at some point I exhaust the tools that I have. And it's important to participate in other things that will expose you to things, and other tools of coping mechanisms, whatever it is, or just like literal ways of stopping and grounding yourself in the moment to experience it. And I feel
there
like
are a lot of tools like that in the course.
Yeah.
A lot of tools like that in the course.
I remember
created quite a few frameworks now since you've taken it.
Nice.
They're really beautiful. So
so 10 out of 10 would recommend. And
thank you.
I always
10 out of 10.
I always do, like, I always talk about it. And there's not a whole lot of things that you like talk about a couple years later, where you're just like, oh, I did this thing, you should do this thing too. But I do, and it's not just because of Militantly Mixed. It's not just because you and I have remained in contact. I personally do have gotten value out of your program, and I want other people to be able to feel like that. Because, and again, this I don't think this sounds like a very humble statement, but it's not intended this way. For someone who is always doing mixed race work like me, I'm always talking to mixed race people with mixedness in the center of it. I'm recording all the time. I'm internet-based conversations all the time. I'm always talking about this stuff. And I got checked through the program where it was like, oh, you're talking about this all the time, and you're not talking about this all the time. There was always something for me to grow on, something for me to develop, something for me to pause and think about. It was never not a useful day.
That's so great.
And so if it's helping someone who is in it all the time, who thinks they're dealing with it all the time, then it's absolutely going to help a person who thinks they're not dealing with it.
It's true. It helps me too. I mean, I learn every time I do a course run, I learn so much, and I end up doing my own self-examination and really coming out with more growth and more knowledge. I appreciate that. I'm really happy to hear that, your Bloom Room is still thriving.
It is. It's still happening.
Militantly Mixed is a ManeHustle media podcast, produced and hosted by me, Charmaine Fury. Music is by David Bogan the One. You can follow us on social media on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Militantly Mixed. If you'd like to become a sponsor of Militantly Mixed, please go to patreon.com/militantlymixed for monthly sponsorship, or paypal.me/militantlymixed for a one-time only donation. And if you like what you hear on Militantly Mixed, please subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to be your mixed-ass self.
ManeHustle Media. Turn your side hustle into your main hustle.